The second round of anti-Trump No Kings protests took place across the country over the weekend, and they were extremely old. The people were old. These protests were the boomiest event since Woodstock. George Soros is reportedly funding them. I guess that's true. It seems much more likely that they were funded by AARP. The demonstrations did not reveal very much about Donald Trump, who manifestly is not a king, much as many of us would probably like him to become one at this point. But the protests did reveal a lot about the increasingly goofy and violent Democrat Party and the final fumes of a mid-century leftism that has finally been exhausted. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. One of the No Kings ladies decided she was going to mock Charlie Kirk being murdered by being shot through the neck. And we now seem to have her identity, and we now seem to know her employer, and there might just be consequences. We'll get to that in one moment. First, I want to tell you about Balance of Nature. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Knowles. I think we all know that we should be eating more fruits and vegetables. And my diet is mostly, it's about 40% caffeine, 30% nicotine, and 20% espresso. Is that, I don't know if that, but so if I'm not, especially if I'm on the road like I am right now, and I'm not getting all my nice, sweet little Elisa fruits and veggies, it's so great to have Balance of Nature. You get a lot of variety too. Balance of Nature comes in easy because what you put in your body matters. Their whole health system gives you 47 different whole food ingredients, 16 fruits, 15 vegetables, 12 aromatic spices, and 4 fibers. We're talking real ingredients like wild blueberries, kale, turmeric, and psyllium husk. Are you getting enough psyllium husk? Probably not. No artificial additives, no sugar added, just nature doing its job. One thing, probably the top thing I love about Balance of Nature is the convenience. You can take it on the road with you, take it with water, chew them. You can open them up, you can put them in your smoothie. It's absolutely terrific. The fiber and spice blend mixes great into drinks as well. Right now, go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Knowles. These are vegan, kosher certified, all the best. You get 35% off your first order, plus you get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Knowles. You might be wondering why I am in this hotel room and not in my studio. It is because I'm in Central Europe right now. Isn't that weird? I'm in Central Europe, but unlike my colleagues, I insist on doing my show. I hate being away from you. I love doing my show. So I dragged Mr. Davies all the way to Europe, and we will be doing it at all kind of crazy hours. And especially, how could we fail to cover the No Kings protest? We're in the land of kings. There used to be kings here, at least. Now the liberals think that Trump is a king. This was so unbearably boomy. The picture, there are videos going around, some of which we can't use for copyright reasons, of these. Look, I'm not one of these people who is constantly complaining about our parents' generation, the boomers, though we'll get to a little bit of that later today because there's very interesting news coming out of religious attendance vis-a-vis boomers and zoomers. But I'm not one of these people who's always railing on boomers. I love my parents. I love my aunts and uncles, my parents' generation. But man, this was bad. This was bad. This was a bunch of aging hippies doing like the YMCA in Chicago. This was sad. The whole thing is really sad because the No Kings protest itself shows you they have no issue. Does anyone think Trump is a king? Trump is making himself into a king? What does that even mean? Does that rile anybody up? Is that a visceral issue? No. If they wanted to have a really strong issue, they'd protest immigration or war or the economy or some policy, something that actually means something. But they have to go to this level of abstraction. Monarchy versus democracy or aristocracy. This really, really abstract, ethereal kind of issue because they got nothing on Trump on the substantive issues. If they tried to go after him on immigration or the economy or foreign policy or any of those things, they would be putting themselves on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. Most people agree with Trump on those things. So they pretend he's a king or whatever. Really, really cringe. Now, the one thing I will say about the No Kings protests, they did one of these back in the spring. This is the second one. They've gotten a little bit better at it. I was looking, I think we have a picture from NPR. Okay, so I'm using a picture from a liberal news source. And you can see they're finally starting to wave American flags. They previously didn't want to wave American flags, but now you're seeing a few American flags at the ostensibly patriotic left-wing rally. But in the foreground, you're seeing the Palestinian flag. You're seeing the Ukraine flag. You're seeing other random flags. Maybe a pride flag in there. There's a Jolly Roger, which is the skull and crossbones. It's the symbol of pirates, symbol of illegitimate violence, which, of course, the Democrats have explicitly embraced in the last month. You're getting a few American flags there, though. But the problem is these guys are allergic to the American flag. They don't want to wave it. They want to wave every other kind of flag on earth. Mexican, Eastern European, gay, not the American one. So anyway, they're getting a little bit better at it. This is probably the best photo NPR could find. It didn't hit. It didn't hit. It was weak. And where it wasn't cringe, it was really deeply offensive. So, for instance, one of the people there, also a gentleman of a certain age, he was wearing the same shirt that the shooter who murdered Charlie Kirk was wearing. So this was an overt endorsement of not only political violence, but of the left murdering a guy who just wanted to debate and speak it out. And this is ostensibly at a pro-democracy protest. Totally discordant, totally ridiculous. George Conway, the now, I guess, ex-husband of Kellyanne Conway. George Conway was wearing a t-shirt that said, "I am Antifa." Antifa. Antifa is an actual terrorist organization, now formally identified as a terrorist organization by the U.S. government, but it's always been one. Anarchists, communists. Two Antifa operatives tried to blow me up at a University of Pittsburgh speech, a debate that I was giving a couple years ago. One guy's in federal prison for it. This would be like wearing a shirt saying I'm the KKK or I'm Al-Qaeda or something like that. This is an actual terror organization. George Conway is a liberal former Republican lawyer, which means that he knows what he's doing. It's, maybe your aunt who doesn't know that much about politics, she says, well, I'm anti-fascist, I'm Antifa. And she doesn't. What does she know? She actually thinks it means anti-fascist. George Conway is a beltway, slick, slimy political operative. He was one of the guys behind the Lincoln Project. Say what you will. I don't think the guy has integrity or principles or anything like that. But at the very least, he's a relatively intelligent person. He pays attention to politics. He knows what that means. He's wearing a shirt that says, I endorse left-wing political violence against conservatives. At the No Kings rally. Tells you everything that's about. Should not be surprising at all. Of course it should not be surprising because Democrats at every level already told us they support political violence. In the polls, multiple YouGov surveys after Charlie Kirk's murder showing that very liberal people were much, much, much more likely to justify political violence than very conservative people, and it was even more pronounced among younger liberals. People minimizing, excusing, even celebrating Charlie's murder in the media, in elected government, random private citizens on Facebook, your coworker, that girl you went to high school with, all over, every single level. So of course that should not be surprising. The most grotesque display, and there were many contenders, the most grotesque one though came from a woman who I guess was in Chicago. There was someone driving by the protest with a Charlie Kirk sign on his car. And this is the sign that the woman made when he drove by.
Hey! You ever heard of Ozempic, you fat ass?
For those of you just listening, totally unmistakable. Just pa, pointing at her neck, gun, bullet going through the neck, in response to an image of Charlie Kirk. Now, Libs of TikTok has identified this woman as a teacher in Chicago public schools. Wait, it gets worse. Daily Mail says that she's a teacher at Nathan Hale Elementary School. Now, there's some reports going around social media that this woman has already been fired. I don't know if that's true. She certainly should be. She should not be permitted in any school, any kind of classroom. She needs to suffer very serious consequences for this. I mentioned this after Charlie died, after he was killed, and after the left showed how hideous its response was. I said, look, there need to be consequences for this. Social ostracism. These people should not be permitted in polite society. They need to lose their jobs in certain cases. I said it's not true to the same degree for every line of work, but certainly in certain industries, any comment that minimizes or celebrates the murder of a peaceful debater who just wants to talk it out needs to result in immediate firing. And the examples I used were nurses in a hospital. You can't operate a hospital if half the patients know that the nurses want to kill them, would be happy if they died. You can't run a hospital that way. Those nurses need to be fired. Can't run a restaurant that way. Can't have a restaurant where half the customers come in and they are wondering if the waiters or the cooks are going to poison their food. And you can't operate a school that way, where half the kids and the parents of those kids are going to wonder if the teachers are actively going to want to kill the kids. Well, not only are we talking about a high school teacher here or a college teacher, we're talking about an elementary school teacher. Totally, totally indefensible. This woman needs to face serious consequences. If she hasn't been fired already, she should be fired. She should never be employed ever again by anything even relating to the education industry. Maybe she can get some job in some dark, private corner of the economy where no one has to look at her or hear from her. Maybe, but that's it. Have to be firm consequences to these things. Now, the problem is she was not the only person there celebrating Charlie's murder. We'll get to that in one moment. And then we'll get to what this means. What this means for the boomer soul. Because I have a theory about how this relates to the rise in church attendance among young people, the decline among older people, what it means for a religious revival if we're going to have one. First, though, I want to tell you about Medishare. Go to Medishare.com/Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. There's no way around it. When it comes to healthcare, people are frustrated with how much it costs, how much to pay for it. The usual ways that we've been doing this have only gotten more expensive, more complicated, more aggravating. That is why Medishare is such a welcome relief. It's called healthcare sharing. It's different and it works. More than 1 million Americans are now doing it. And Medishare has been a great option for more than 30 years. So really, you could save thousands of dollars a year on your healthcare and be happy. Imagine that. If you've heard about it and you want to know more, there are two easy options. You go to Medishare.com/Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Medishare.com/Michael, or grab your phone and send a text. You will get the info that could be really, really helpful to you and your family. Just text the word Michael. Did I mention how it's spelled? It's M-I-C-H-A-E-L to 70246 to get the facts. That is Michael to 70246. And then you will get the facts. You will get the link. Text Michael today to 70246. I saw, it was an article by David French, who used to be kind of conservative. He would write for National Review. Now he's a full-blown liberal, left-wing liberal. Writes for, New York Times, The Atlantic, those kind of places. And there was a headline a few days ago. It said, Christians in America are starting to do things, and it's scaring me. You know, this post-Charlie revival of some churches. Oh, this is scaring me. And then, meanwhile, he says, I went to the No Kings protests, and it was so lovely. Wasn't it just so great? Well, look, it's easy to point to any event and say, well, here's the fringe. Here's the lady making fun of Charlie being shot in the neck. Here's the guy wearing the T-shirt of the shooter. But look, if it's just one fringe weirdo, you don't want to define the whole group that way. It's not just one fringe weirdo. It's one, and then two. Here's a woman, I think this was Daily Signal, interviewed this lady, explicitly stating her happiness at Charlie's murder.
Recently, with Charlie Kirk being assassinated,
Kirk is a piece of garbage. Of course we were mean. I am so tired of people saying, oh, but, it's a terrible thing. No, Hitler is dead. I'm glad Hitler's dead.
Something that I've heard in interviewing Republicans is that they're concerned with the health care going to undocumented immigrants. What would you say about that?
I don't know that it's true. Everybody deserves health care, and we can certainly afford it in this country. So again, they're just, they're pointing to things and saying it's our fault, we're too liberal. Yeah, it's really depressing. I don't know how anybody your age even thinks of having children, okay? Okay, millions of Democrats did not vote. Whose fault is that? We need to get ourselves together, and we might even need to be a little bit meaner.
Yes, that's that woman's problem. She's just not mean enough. She just needs to get a little bit meaner. That woman could be Charlie Kirk's mother. Not in her demeanor, obviously, but in her age. That's not some freaky, septum-piercing, purple hair, face tatted up, messed up 19-year-old girl. That woman's a boomer. And she's saying, oh, I'm so glad that a 31-year-old father and husband who was a genteel, generous, gracious debater, only ever wanted to speak it out. I'm so glad he got murdered. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Hitler's dead. He's Hitler. If Charlie Kirk is Hitler, we're all Hitler. And she wants us dead too. She says, you know, just don't know how anyone your age could have kids. Then the conversation moves on. So what do you think about Democrats shutting down the government to give health care to? She goes, and this is so perfectly left-wing. She goes, no, I don't think that's happening, and it's good that it's happening. She actually did that. She did the meme. The meme is, it's not happening and it's good that it's happening. She said that. Oh, I don't think that's happening, but it's really good. We need to do that. And we need to be meaner. I don't want to put too fine a point on it. I'll move on to what I think is the deeper problem here with the boomers and the zoomers and everyone in between. The left has told you every way it can that it largely supports the murder of Charlie Kirk because he's slightly to the right of Hillary Clinton. He was more than slightly to the right, but they would support it for everyone who is slightly to the right of Hillary Clinton. They support political violence. They would gleefully murder you too. They would orphan your children. They would dance on your grave. That's not an Antifa operative. There are Antifa operatives. She's not. She's like your average boomer lady. Your average left-wing boomer lady. There are a lot of great right-wing boomer ladies, but she's your average left-wing boomer lady. The people who went on the establishment media the day Charlie was killed and minimized it or celebrated it, they're pundits. They're national political analysts. They're elected officials. They're elementary school teachers. And I think there are a lot of establishment Republicans and squishy people who used to be conservative and then, turned over to the other side who want to pretend that this isn't happening, or they want to pretend it's more of a fringe phenomenon. All of the available evidence says that this is widespread on the left. So if we ignore it now, if the people in power just ignore it now, I don't want them to claim ignorance, okay? If we don't fire these people, if we're in positions of corporate power, if we don't fire them, when they go further to break the law, they incite violence, they engage in direct threats. If people who are in political power, if they don't prosecute them, then they got blood on their hands because this is a widespread problem. Okay, so what is wrong with the boomers? Boomers, I know there are boomers who listen to this show. I am grateful to your generation. Two members of your generation gave me life. I don't paint with the broad brush, as do some of my coeval colleagues, but something's really wrong with the boomers. And you've seen this now. There's a study just came out. Shows that Gen Z and millennials now lead church attendance. Isn't that weird? The younger people, especially Gen Z is very young, they're going to church at much higher rates than their parents. That's weird. It's supposed to be your parents go to church, and then the kids kind of rebel, and then maybe when they get older, they come back to church. Here, it's totally flipped. What's going on? According to this new report, Gen Z, so we'll get real specific, people born 1997 to 2007 go to church on average 23 times per year. Just not enough, by the way, because you have an obligation to go once a week, at least. So, anyway, but that's okay. They go half the year. Millennials, born between 1981 and 1996, are right behind them. It's almost a tie. they go 22 times per year. And that number is up. Millennials were only going to church 19 times per year in 2012. Gen X, it drops off a little bit. They only go 19 times per year on average. Boomers go less than 17 times per year. I have a theory as to why this is. And I haven't heard anyone else articulate this theory, and it's total psychobabble, but it happens to be correct. And I will get to that in 1 second. First, I want to tell you about Leaf Filter. Go to leaffilter.com/Knowles. Fall is a great time of year. The trees change colors. The pumpkin spice is abundant. But those autumn leaves will end up clogging up your gutters, causing headaches and potential damage. With Leaf Filter, America's top gutter protection company, you can enjoy the season without worrying about cleaning them out ever again. Right now, you can schedule a free inspection and estimate, plus save up to 30% on your entire purchase at leaffilter.com/Knowles, Knowles. You could keep messing around with those cheap DIY fixes from the hardware store. How many times do you really want to climb that ladder and scoop the gunk out with your bare hands? For me, the answer is precisely 0 times. Leaf Filter is the permanent solution built with patented technology that only lets water through. No gaps, no holes, no excuses. And they've got a lifetime no clogs guarantee, so once it's on, you're done. A Leaf Filter Pro doesn't just slap it on. They will actually clean, realign, and seal your gutters first so everything works the way it is supposed to. Right now, you need to go to leaffilter.com/Knowles. Schedule your free appointment right now. You get the inspection done, 30% off your entire purchase at leaffilter.com/Knowles, leaffilter.com/Knowles. A free estimate, free inspection, 30% off, leaffilter.com/Knowles. See representative for warranty details. Zoomers and millennials are going to church at way higher rates than boomers. It's weird. It seems contrary to the order of nature. I have a theory as to why, and it's actually the same reason. It's because all the boomers got divorced. That's why. I know it's psychobabble. I know it seems kind of like anecdotal or something, but the plural of anecdote is data, and the data back this one up. I think the reason that the Zoomers and millennials are going to church is the same reason the boomers don't go to church, and it's because the boomers got divorced. And on the boomer side of things, they all got divorced. And I'm using divorce as just the clearest sign of political turmoil, political vice, because the family is the fundamental political unit. There are all other things that go along with that too. You know, the drugs and the kind of the selfishness in all sorts of political areas. But the divorce especially. Because I've noticed something. When people, especially when they get divorced, they feel ashamed, and that keeps them away from church. And I kind of get it. Now, we all sin. We all fall short of the glory of God. If you've had a divorce or something like that, you should go to church. You should go to church. You should do what you can to avail yourself of the sacraments and to repent and just do whatever you can. But people feel ashamed and they pull away. And the political disorder, the profound political disorder that entered into society because the boomers, more than any generation in history, got divorced and continue to get divorced, by the way. The boomers are having, what do they call it, gray divorce, silver divorce, something like that. They are still getting divorced at much higher rates than any other generation. Because of that, because of the political turmoil and disorder that came about because of that, the millennials and the Gen Z see that's bad and they want an alternative to it. I think it's the same thing. I know it sounds kind of psychobabbly, but it's because it's more than drug addiction or, I don't know, financial selfishness or, I don't know, it touches on the heart of politics. And Zoomers who are so messed up, there's so much disorder in their political society that they're being told by their teachers that it's good when peaceful debaters are murdered, and they're being told that boys can be girls, and they're being told to mutilate their bodies, and they are being educated in the most cartoonishly preposterous and villainous way, probably of any generation in history. So they look around and they say, this is completely nuts, man. What happened to society? And the boomers, unfortunately, they're kind of holding the bag because they're the hippie generation. It's the me generation, right? It's not too late though, boomers. I don't want to sound like I'm just beating up on, but you got to go to church. You got to go to church more than 16 times a year. Okay, on average, you got to do it. And you got to recognize that when we all sin and we all do bad things and we're all responsible for all sorts of bad stuff, the devil wants you to just totally dig into that. Say, well, no, I was right to do that. I was right to sin. I was right to do something wrong. It's me. The church is wrong. The gods of the copybook headings are wrong. Morality is wrong. God's wrong. It can't be me that's wrong. Just admit you're wrong. Just admit you did something wrong. And every generation does something wrong. They do a lot of things wrong. Just admit it. Because this is what the devil does. The devil leans into your ear on the one hand and says, hey, that bad thing, that's no big deal. And then you do the bad thing, and then 2 seconds later, the devil says, yeah, that's the worst thing ever, and you'll never be forgiven. Definitely don't seek forgiveness for it. Definitely don't try to repent. And, God turns bad things for good. So if that political disorder can convince younger generations to turn toward truth and morality and goodness and order, all the better. All the better. Now, speaking of aging, Washington Post has a really, really interesting article. It's on the age-old fear of dying alone. So WaPo put this out. This was last week or maybe even a little earlier. But I really want to get to it because I think this is a problem that you're seeing grow right now. It's only going to get worse in coming years. Here's just the first few paragraphs. This summer at dinner with her best friend, Jackie Barden raised an uncomfortable topic, the possibility that she might die alone. I have no children, no husband, no siblings, Barden remembered saying. Who's going to hold my hand while I die? Barden, 75, never had children. She's lived on her own in Western Massachusetts since her husband died in 2003. You hit a point in your life when you're not climbing up anymore. You're climbing down, she said. You start thinking about what it's going to be like at the end. It's something that many older adults who live alone, a growing population, more than 16 million strong in 2023, wonder about. Many have family and friends they can turn to, but some have no spouse or children, have relatives who live far away. Others lost dear friends. More than 15 million people, 55 or older, don't have a spouse or biological children. Nearly 2 million have no family members at all. It's really awful. Your heart breaks for these people. In one sense, at least, though, there's a consolation in that the many, many people who are lonely, one of the worst feelings you can have, they are not alone in their loneliness. Loneliness is, oddly enough, a social phenomenon now. You're in the same boat with a lot of people, even though by nature of the problem you feel totally alone. They say, well, yikes, who's going to be with me when I die? I think this is another example of a silver lining to a storm cloud. The turmoil that's been introduced into society, I think, is going to show people that there are better behaviors and worse behaviors, and actually it is good to have families intact and to have a lot of kids if you're blessed to have a lot of kids, and to do all of these things. And it would be not everyone's dream, right, is to die on a bed surrounded by your family. It doesn't really work out for anyone. Even if you are dying and you understand that you're on your way out, and often, it's like in the middle of the night, no one's around you, and but that's the dream that we all have. That's the dream at least traditional people have, religious people have. I guess in modern life we say, oh, the best way to die is, to be bludgeoned on the back of the head with a 2x4, you never see it coming. Just the lights go out or something. But traditionally that was understood as the worst kind of death. People wanted to know when they were going to die. They would prefer a long-term illness to a sudden death because then you could prepare for your death and you could prepare your soul and figure out where you're going. So I get it. I get why people are afraid no one's going to hold their hand when they die. However, we're all going to die alone. This is kind of a depressing show today, isn't it? Well, it doesn't have to be a depressing show. We are all going to die alone, in the sense that even if there are people in the room or nurses or family members or whatever, as you're slipping away, you might not be totally conscious. You might not recognize people if you have a kind of dementia. You might not, and the place you're going, you can't take them with you. You are going to die alone, and you're going to face a particular judgment. I'm on a Robert Frost kick recently. It's in anticipation of America 250. I'm reading one of the great American poets. But there was a line that really hit me from Home Burial. It was just a little bit of the poem. He says, "You couldn't care. The nearest friends can go with anyone to death. comes so far short, they might as well not try to go at all. No, from the time when one is sick to death, one is alone, and he dies more alone. Friends make pretense of following to the grave, but before one is in it, their minds are turned and making the best of their way back to life and living people and things they understand. Totally true. If you've ever had a loved one who's dying or you've been around that, you know, death freaks people out, and they start making other plans even before the loved one dies. So it's gonna be you and God. And so in a way, I think that this realization, the fact that people don't have big families anymore, that a lot of people are alienated, that they're dying alone, the fact that there's a lot of divorce in our society, and so people don't even have their spouses, or maybe the spouse dies before them. In a way, I think it draws people to the ultimate consolation, which is even if you have 100 kids, it's going to be you and God, okay? At the end of it, it's going to be you and God. So you're not really alone. You could be in the middle of Siberia with no other human being around you. You're not alone. You're never alone. But you have to come to that truth. In a way, I think this realization might remedy the social situation. It will impel people to have more kids. But also, I think it will help remedy the religious situation. Now, speaking of alienation, one of my favorite stories I've read recently, a lady is suing her neighbor for smoking pot in his own house, and she's winning. And I love that. I love that. But I'm going to leave on that tantalizing bit about the left-hand cigarettes. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? I'm talking about the old Peruvian parsley. This is a family show, so I want to speak in euphemisms. I mean the California cumin, the devil's lettuce, the sin spinach. I'm talking about Mary Jane, okay? A lady is suing her neighbor for smoking pot in his own house, and I think it's great. So we'll get to that tomorrow. You can fight over that in the comments in the meantime. Because right now I want to tell you about Preborn. Go to preborn.com/Knowles, Knowles. We are living at a time when lies are easy and the truth is costly. Nowhere is that clearer and more devastating than in the battle for life. That is exactly the issue Natalia faced. When she first learned about her pregnancy, Natalia considered abortion. She was influenced by the messaging she'd been exposed to all the time. Everything changed when she heard her baby's heartbeat. In that moment, she felt a divine calling to continue her pregnancy. Trusting God would make a way forward. Natalia chose life. She found herself surrounded by the love, support, and resources she needed. At Preborn Network Clinics, this happens on average 200 times a day because of the support from people like you. Mothers who are overwhelmed and pressured, they see their child, they hear the truth, they realize that they are not alone. That moment costs $28. $28 to sponsor an ultrasound doubles a baby's chance at life. This is not the time for silence. It is a time for truth. I personally support this organization. I think it is terrific. Right now, you can dial #250 keyword baby, or you can go to preborn.com/Knowles, preborn.com/Knowles. Give what you can, please. My favorite comment yesterday is from Lil Navajo 6030, who says they just need to ban abortion, therefore more kids. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people were reacting to that, how to beef up the birth rate, and they said, well, we need to fix the economy, or well, we need to, stop girls from going to college, so they can have kids at 22 or whatever. And we need to do this, we need to do that. But actually, what you need to do is just stop abortion, because over 1 million babies a year are killed through abortion. 1.2 million, I think it is now, because 70% of abortions are through the abortion pill. Even during the real height of the immigration debates under Biden, we're talking about over 1 million illegal aliens coming into the country every year. And the squishes would say, no, we need those immigrants to come in because otherwise our economy will collapse because we have a declining population. And the delta between what our population is, like our birth rate, and where our population needs to be to sustain itself is, you know what it is? It's about roughly like 1 million people per year. Meaning, if you got rid of abortion, there would be no argument about the need for mass migration. You would fix that problem. You would help fix the family problem. You'd help fix the alienation problem. You'd fix a lot of problems with patriotism because you just have more of a connection of a people to the territory. You'd fix a lot. Sometimes it really is that simple. If I were king, I'm not a king. We have no kings in America, I'm told. But if I were king and I could just wave a magic wand, say do one or two things to fix the social situation, I would say abortion and contraception, never invented. we would be, it's like the meme, you know, we would have flying cars, we would be just in this amazing society. If you could get rid of those two things, abortion and artificial contraception, like 91% of our social problems would go away. Okay, very timely, speaking of abortion, my friend Seth Gruber has a new movie out on the origins of abortion, how it came about, and that is the 1916 Project. Take a listen. I thought I knew everything about abortion and Margaret Sanger and the founding of Planned Parenthood. I was wrong. Check out this clip from my friend Seth Gruber's new movie, The 1916 Project.
Evil is now being called good.
For 65 million murdered unborn children. We're all asking the same question right now, aren't we?
How did this happen? How did this happen so suddenly? Well, the answer is it didn't happen so suddenly.
Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood.
I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world.
There are human beings who are alive. They don't even know that they were marked for death.
Right off the top, the title is going to hit everybody. 1916 Project. That's kind of cute. You know, the 1619 Project was the New York Times send-up of American history.
Yep. That's right.
So I like it. The marketer in me likes the hook. It's great. Is there any deeper resonance to it, or is it just eye-catching?
It's not just a linguistic, I flipped the letters, 1619 Nicole Hannah-Jones.
I'm a sucker for a good pun. It would have been okay if that were it.
Yeah. But there's a political and philosophical relationship too. So everyone remembers the 1619 Project, right? America's systemically racist, root and branch. There's nothing redeemable about your country. Our real birthday as a country shouldn't even be 1776. It should be 1619 when
The revolution was fought to defend slavery.
That's what they claimed, right? Howard Zinn was just having, a party. And you had left-wing liberal academics, writing letters to the New York Times saying this is ridiculous. I think they were demanding that they remove Nicole Hannah-Jones' Pulitzer Prize. So anyways, the 1619 Project, which remember, became K-12 curriculum. There was a curriculum version to it in American public high schools. Comes out, if I'm remembering my math right, Michael, about 9 to 10 months before George Floyd. Now, mostly peaceful, somewhat fiery, 2020, burn, loot, pillage, kill. What did CNN call the summer of love of 2020? The 1619 riots. On CNN, on national television, they made that link between if America is systemically racist, root and branch, and there's nothing redeemable about it, and the white man, the white man's knee killed George Floyd, then everything is explained by systemic racism. And so this is the spirit of 1619 manifesting in our streets. Then Nicole Hannah-Jones, the author, tweets, and we have the screenshot in the film, 1916 Project. She said something like, I'm so proud, or something. She was so proud to have the pillaging, burning, rioting, and murder riots of 2020 be named after her 1619 Project. And then this led into, remember this whole cancel culture of anything that the liberal academic elite described as racist. Any company that had maybe an origin in racism, they said, do the work, silence is violence. So Aunt Jemima had to go. So here's where this gets absolutely hilarious, and it reminds me of a phrase that I think I've heard I say it a lot. The revolution always eats its own. So in the midst of going after anything that's perceived as racist, and these are the disciples of the 1619 Project, the leftist, pro-abortion, trans the kids, kill the baby revolutionaries put Planned Parenthood in their crosshairs. So this wasn't Michael Knowles or Charlie Kirk or Glenn Beck attacking Planned Parenthood. This was the left attacking the left. And they said, your founder, Margaret Sanger, she was a racist.
That's right. They took down her statues, right? Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
But the key to this story and why there's a political philosophical relationship between my film and the 1619 Project is that was damage done by the left.
Yeah.
They put Planned Parenthood in the crosshairs.
Right.
And the director of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York, Michael, came out. Her name's Karen Seltzer, which, by the way, I'm sorry, that's hilarious. Karen and Seltzer, a light alcoholic drink. Like, what's her middle name? Cat Lover or something? Like, that is just hilarious. It's good fiction there. And she comes out and she says, we're done making excuses for our founder and the damage that she did to communities of color. They stopped giving out the Margaret Sanger Award. Which Pelosi got. Kamala Harris is trying really hard to get it. They renamed the Manhattan Planned Parenthood mega clinic, which was called the Sanger Center. They took her name off. By the way, that clinic closed down because some of the defunding from the Trump administration, Planned Parenthood can't operate all their facilities. And then New York City where Sanger started, Michael. That corner that the mega Planned Parenthood clinic was on, you know, it's called the Margaret Sanger Square. So the city takes down the sign, Planned Parenthood renames the building, and they stop giving out the Margaret Sanger Award. Why? Because of the 1619 Project revolutionaries calling everything racist and attacking Planned Parenthood. Thank you, Nicole Hannah-Jones.
Yeah,
everything is racist for causing a nationwide interest in why would they cancel the patron saint of feminism. I wrote a book and made a documentary to tell that history.
No, I remember, obviously I remember all of that about Sanger. I didn't make the connection of the kind of being hoisted with their own petard. So Sanger, look, conservatives have been making this point for a while, that Sanger was not exactly racially egalitarian. And there's a very famous line, which I myself have quoted in books and columns, that she says, in Woman in the New Race, we don't want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. Now, I've always wondered in that line, look, the effect of her policy is disproportionately to exterminate blacks. That is indisputable. I assume when she wrote that, what she was trying to convey is we don't want people to misinterpret our motives or something.
That's how the liberals have
That's how they spin it.
That's how they've always spun it. You want some other Sanger lines? The patron saint of feminism here, guys? Okay, how about this one? Birth control is not contraception thoughtlessly and indiscriminately practiced. Birth control means the cultivation and release of the better racial elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds who threaten the blossoming of the finest flowers of American civilization. Full quote from Birth Control Review, her magazine.
It's harder to spin.
A little bit. Plus then she launched this thing called the Negro Project. So there's that.
It's not pro, I assume. It's not pro-Negro. Okay, so what is going to surprise me? I've heard all the stuff about Margaret Sanger. I know the perfidy of Planned Parenthood. I understand its connection to the eugenics movement that the left wants to deny. Give me some tidbits. What do I get to expect when I watch the movie?
Why don't we open that question, Michael, with a line from Chesterton?
I'd open any conversation.
The disadvantage of men not knowing the past is that they do not know the present. You see, history is a hill. History is a hill, or high point of vantage, from which alone a man sees the town in which he lives or the age in which he is living. So let us ascend that hill together over these
delicious Mayflower cigar.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, by the way. Okay, so how about this one? Here's something maybe you don't even know, Michael. When Margaret Sanger founded Planned Parenthood, it was called the American Birth Control League.
Yes.
She renamed it Planned Parenthood in 1942 because these people, the Nazis, had given the phrase eugenics a slightly negative connotation.
Yes.
And so in an attempt to rebrand and because the American Birth Control League
So the rebrand was in response to the Nazis?
Oh, yeah.
That I didn't know.
And so let me prove that smoking gun a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is not just conjecture. This is not just red meat for the base. Like, I can prove all this. So she founds the American Birth Control League, 1921. 1916 is her first clinic.
Yeah.
But 1921 is when the organization has a C3 status and it's established.
Okay.
The founding board member of Planned Parenthood was Lothrop Stoddard, the exalted cyclops of the Massachusetts KKK chapter. What? That's right. Lothrop Stoddard, the exalted cyclops of the Massachusetts KKK, who was really like the KKK's intellectual. Like, it was his books that were read broadly by KKK people. One of them was called The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy. And then he had another book called The Menace of the Underman. Or so the full title was The Revolt Against Civilization, The Menace of the Underman.
And the underman being a term that we get from Nietzsche, obviously very influential on the Nazi Party, this notion that there's the Übermenschen and the Untermenschen. Yeah, right. the Superman and the Underman.
Underman, yeah.
So this language is directly coming from that. So this was always my question about it. Look, I'm happy to beat up on Margaret Sanger all day, and she's one of the most wicked women in the history of the United States.
Sure.
Is it fair to call her like a white supremacist, or what? Is she a racist?
The key to understanding Sanger, and really, by the way, Planned Parenthood's culture trajectory, and to understand the modern left today, and their obsession with deconstructing the family, and their obsession with all things sex. Okay? The key to understanding these things is that Sanger did not have any original ideas.
No.
What she was original for doing was helping unite and bring together the seemingly disparate aspects of what we might today call woke progressivism.
Okay.
A little bit of socialism, a little bit of orgies, a little bit of Woodstock. Of course, Sanger was before all that. A little bit of depopulationism, neo-Malthusianism. She helped bring these intellectuals and movements together to really treat it as this is one movement. This is one assault against the foundations of Western civilization, and it has to be united.
Obviously, Margaret Sanger was doing something that, practically speaking, involved a lot of weird sex stuff because it was killing kids. But it was ostensibly for these abstract ideological motives of either purifying the human race or...
Well, see, it's both. So to understand Sanger, you have to understand that she was a sexual liberationist.
So this is what
she was also a eugenicist.
This is what I want to get to, though, is with all of these radicals and revolutionaries, they almost always, maybe French Revolution accepted, Robespierre was kind of a Puritan, but they almost always were involved in really weird sex stuff. The fact that she went off to England to find herself and sleep with H.G. Wells or whatever, that's really weird.
Surprising she didn't go to Paris, honestly.
Right. That's, wow, okay, so she was, today she would have had some weird haircut and purple hair and been doing...
Sanger did have a very short hair, yeah. You're thinking of the kind of the second wave butch feminist, not very attractive. Yeah. So anyways, Havelock Ellis coaches her journey back to Greenwich Village. And then a few miles away from Greenwich Village in Brownsville, you see where all those poor minorities lived. She opens the first Planned Parenthood birth control clinic. But what's this? People don't know this. Havelock Ellis, you know who he was mentored by? You know who his pen pal mentor was? He was the protege of whom? Francis Galton.
Okay.
The guy who coined the term eugenics.
Oh, wow, all right.
And who was Francis Galton's cousin, Michael?
Well, my cousin's Beyonce. I don't know who.
Charles Darwin.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Galton, the half-cousin of Charles Darwin, who takes his cousin's ideas in Survival of the Fittest.
Wow.
And says, let's apply that to the human gene pool.
So
the modern father of the eugenics movement, Francis Galton, mentors and coaches Havelock Ellis, who becomes Margaret Sanger's #1 political, social, sexual mentor.
So that makes a ton of sense, though. It really does make sense. Right. It obviously makes sense that you get this connection between Nietzsche and modern eugenics, birth control, abortion. Yep. But yeah, of course it comes from Darwin. Darwin, whose acolytes would go on to observe not merely a kind of survival of the fittest, biologically, but even morally, a kind of fading away of sin and grace and virtue. To say that it's all just kind of these random physical processes.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. I want to steelman eugenics though for a second, because it gets a bad rap. But it seems to me that when a good-looking guy goes out to a bar and he finds a girl who's good-looking, smart, slim, with it, and he says, that's the woman that I want to sleep with and I want to raise my kids. That at a broad enough definition, that's a kind of eugenics, because you're saying I want my kids to have good genes. And we all do that to some degree. What's the difference between that and what Margaret Sanger and all these freaks are talking about?
Well, listen, that's just fallen man being fallen man and caring maybe more about fleshly appearances than the heart and the soul. Obviously, that's not the same as, you know what? People who are uglier with lower IQs are less human, and we should eradicate them.
Yeah.
So actually, how about this? Here's the opening line. I think you wanted some juicy stuff here. Here's the opening line from the Negro Project proposal. And by the way, for all the stuff I'm going to say over the next few minutes, people go, fact check, that weird homeschool kid Michael's having on, that's not true. I wrote a book that goes with the film, the 1916 Project, The Lying, the Witch, and the War We're In, is the subtitle. And I have all the footnotes, okay? So she says, the mass of Negroes, particularly in the South, are still breeding carelessly and disastrously, with the result that the increase among Negroes, even more than among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit. end quote. That was in the opening proposal of her Negro Project.
Who's she pitching? She's not pitching black guys, I assume. Who's she proposing to?
And so obviously, listen, like Richard Weaver said, ideas have consequences. I like to add, bad ideas have victims. Dr. Nancy Pearcey makes this brilliant point that, listen, because we're rational beings created in God's image, we tend to work out the logical consequences of the ideologies or the worldviews we imbibe. We're rational beings. If you take a worldview and you make that your lens through which you see the world, you might not even know or be able to articulate everything about the worldview that you operate off of.
Yeah.
But you are operating off of it.
Yeah, right. It's like the water through which you move.
That's right.
The lens
Culture is to us what water is to a fish. It's all we know. So I always like talking about ideas because they drive all the decisions that we make. Everyone's got a worldview. Everyone's got a lens. How do we start seeing some of those early seeds that suggested racism, suggested eugenics, suggested weird sex cults and weird sex stuff in all of the kind of people she associated herself with? So this guy Lothrop Stoddard, right, who was the exalted cyclops of the Massachusetts KKK and the founding board member of Planned Parenthood, what? Yeah. He writes this book called The Menace of the Underman. Well, these people in the Third Reich, they just loved this book.
Yeah.
And Michael, he gets invited to the Third Reich in 1939, Sanger's board member. He meets with Himmler, Fritz Sauckel, Robert Ley, and a brief meeting with Hitler himself. I've done my research on this, and I would love people to fact check me on this because so far I have not been able to find anyone else. I believe he is the only American to have had a one-on-one, face-to-face meeting with the Fuhrer after he rose to power. Margaret Sanger's board member. He helped influence a German eugenics court to reach a positive verdict in sterilizing certain Jews. His books were recommended reading and assigned in Nazi public schools for youth at the time. And then when they translated his book, The Menace of the Underman, which the Third Reich paid to translate into German, they translated The Menace of the Underman into Untermensch.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Wow. The point, I think, is a very important takeaway, and other people have touched on it. Abortion, which is really what this is about. It's the Planned Parenthood
pagan sacrament.
Yes, and that it's not just one issue among many. That you're saying it's really at the heart of this whole left-wing.
If it's true that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, then it's equally true that the hand that wrecks the cradle ruins the world.
That's good. You should write a book. You should write a book. That's very good. People can see the movie right now at the Daily Wire.
And if you want the book, do me a favor. Don't go to Amazon Prime. Go to the1916project.com. And only by buying the hardcover from the1916project.com can you get a little Easter egg in the back, which is a fold-out timeline that's a replication of the Glenn Beck-ish chalkboard scene from the film that puts all the puzzle pieces together on how this happened.
That's a good inducement.
And by the way, churches can screen this all around the country. So for pastors, people that want to host a screening at their church, get all the people fired up, then all those people go tell their friends and they say, where do I watch it? Daily Wire Plus.
You heard it here first. And if you were listening and you were just part of the hoi polloi and you're not actually a member of Daily Wire Plus, you got to head over right now and go watch it. Seth, that was very good. And we still have a little cigar left.
The Mayflower.
We can talk off camera. You don't get to see that. Good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother.